Haha, that looks really cute.
Oh, I love it!
Welcome to the Mike Cassidy Photography Podcast.
Thank you, big voice in the sky. My name is Mike Cassidy, and I'm a boudoir photographer from New Jersey, and this is my show. I get to talk to some of the best photographers in the world to find out how they got started, what sparks their creativity, and what hurdles they've had to overcome to get their businesses going. Along the way, we'll probably have a few laughs, but I'm here to have in-depth conversations about all kinds of things you've always wanted to know from the best out there. So stay tuned. You never know what you may learn. Oh, hello. My name is Michael, and I'm your neighbor. Welcome to the show. Welcome to mid-May. You certainly wouldn't guess it by what's going on outside in this planet Earth. It's cold. I'm in New Jersey, and it's cold. I think this is even going on all throughout the Midwest and other parts of the country. It's cold. There's going to be like lows in the mid-30s tonight. And for you Celsius types, I think that's like 1 degree Celsius, and it's May. You know, the news was saying, I think last night, that like this morning in some parts of New Jersey, there was going to be flurries. This weather is just strange. This year has been a strange year. And one of my quarantine activities that was non-photography related was I was going to teach myself how to plant some flowers. I was going to do that around the house. So I went out and I got some seeds and I bought some lavender and some other things. And I wanted to try to learn how to plant these flowers. So that was my project for this weekend. But I don't think so when it's going to be this cold outside, you know, and I don't have a green thumb to start, but something tells me planting stuff when it's in the 40s isn't like a great idea. So looks like my gardening project is going to be put on hold till spring finally arrives, whenever that may be. Is it going to be in June? Is it going to be in July? I'm cold, and I'm like actually sitting here in a hoodie, and I just want to be warm. I just want spring and summer to be here. Well, today's show is a good one. I got a chance maybe a month and a half ago. I'm kind of like losing all sense of time perspective in this quarantine lockdown to talk to Nino Batista. You know Nino. Nino is a model photographer, a retouching educator based out of the Houston area, and he's worldwide. If you've seen like a men's or lifestyle magazine over the past 10 years or so, you've probably seen Nino's work in there. You know, he's been in international Playboy editions, FHM, you name it. He also writes for a few online publications like Fstoppers, and he's taught photography and retouching in like countless cities across the country and around the world. And he's been at events like ShutterFest and CreativeLive he's spoken at, and many others. So I'm sure you know him. We had a good chat. And during this episode, I wanted to talk to Nino about a few of his photos. So when I was interviewing him, I was like sending him some photos to get some reaction and some insight to some of his work. And these photos, if you're listening to the part that we were talking about these shots, they're going to be uploaded to the podcast website. You can go see them at thephotographypodcast.show, just so you can see what we were talking about during the episode. So you can click on over there and take a look at these shots that he took. And also, in the beginning of this episode, there's a couple minutes of coronavirus talk, and I was thinking I was going to cut it out, but then I didn't. You know, it's real. It's kind of what we were living at that moment, so I kind of left it in, so you have to put up with a couple of minutes of that in the beginning of this episode. But this is a really good show. Nino's a really smart guy. It's definitely worth taking a few minutes to listen to this. So sit back and enjoy this episode with Nino. I'll be back shortly, and enjoy. We are on. All right, Nino, you are live.
Hey, all right, excellent.
Okay, so I'm here with Nino Batista. on the show today. And, it's hard not to bring this up at first. We were chatting a little bit about, but we're recording this like in the middle of this pandemic going on. And I'm located just short distance outside of New York, and it's really bad.
That's what I've been hearing.
Up in this area, as far as every day, the mayor or the governor is up there. We need ventilators. They're turning like ships into hospitals and taking over colleges for dorms for sick people. It's like frightening. And it still seems like it's on the rise here. And I know you're down in Texas.
Yeah.
And so how has that been an impact down there so far? What's going on in that area? Has it really come that way yet?
I mean, it has. There's no question. I'm in Houston, which is very quietly the fourth largest city in the country. So it's not exactly the middle of nowhere. It's not Montana, So there's a lot of concern here. They're not quite as alarmed yet, I don't think. There's still a lot of things that are otherwise normal. Like I'm just north of Houston and in a different county of the main Houston, Harris County. And life is more or less normal up here. Now, that's not to say that people are being negligent, but it's not. There's a lot of things closed, no one's going to work and all that. People are staying away from each other, but there isn't the, I guess, the severity of some of the other big cities.
They hit their full force. Yeah. They're not making people stay home. Everything
No, we are absolutely asked to stay home.
Everything is shut down.
But everything is shut down. But I don't know that...
the fear has kind of...
There's a certain, like, calmness here, which, while appealing, don't get me wrong, it's better than panic, it hasn't hit here. And maybe it won't. I don't know what's going on specifically downtown Houston, but here about 25 miles north in the suburbs, it's pretty relaxed, yeah.
Yeah, and the strange thing about it, unlike, if it was a hurricane or something, you look outside your window and there's no, evidence of anything going on. It's all quiet. It's started to become to spring. So it's hard. It's a little bit of a hard thing to kind of grasp at first because, you don't see anything just by looking out your window that looks differently. And people up here, it's still calm. There's way fewer cars out. People are staying in their homes, and you still have to go out to get food once in a while. The stores, there's nothing really crazy going on in the stores or anything, but you still, if you listen to the news, that you're just pounding away at this, and all it is about people dying, and stay home. So hopefully people take heed to that, and this wave washes over us here in the next 2 weeks or so. I don't think it's going to be any quicker than that.
I agree.
Once that goes down, it starts to hit the downslide there. But I wasn't sure if this is going like east to west or if it was starting all over the country, like sort of equally. But it's shocking how your life can change in just like 2 or 3 weeks. This was something that was halfway around the world. Now suddenly people here are trapped in their homes. So many people lost their jobs. It's just a shocking change.
Yeah, the hit to commerce and business, which doesn't seem like it should be anyone's priority, and I understand that it isn't. But the reality is that when all this is over and the dust settles, there's going to be a lot of devastated small businesses completely shut down. There's going to be a lot of people who got laid off, a lot of people who are needing help in some kind. There already are now, but it's getting worse. And sure, I'm speaking from personal side because as a small business owner, self-employed artist, I'm fully aware that what I offer is more or less considered a luxury. It's not even close to an essential. So right now I have no business at all. And that's not to say, oh, boo-hoo. I mean, luckily I do pretty well for myself, so I'm floating. But I can't float forever. So like I said, I don't want to be that guy who's bringing up money right now, but everyone's hurting on that front. And that's actually a really concern of mine because if it all ends and settles and most people don't have this virus and it's under control and there's people aren't, as fearful of dying. And once all that's settled, then what? And that's really what's going to be interesting to me because already a lot of people have lost so much.
Right.
So,
yeah. And we'll, you're trying to look over what's going on in China or the rest of the world. And how long was the main part of this? Is it going to be 3 weeks? Is it going to be 4 weeks before it starts to go down? And I guess it comes down to how long is that downslope. If it drops really quick and people feel safe to go back in and businesses start to reopen, or is that going to be a long, slow, where we could be into summer before things start to, and I guess that's the unknown, and it's hard to speculate at this point, but you're right. And a lot of people, and I'm trying to get some people on, and I have some interviews coming up with people more involved in the wedding industry, say like wedding photographers and so forth. I know that's all been canceled. Every single wedding I'm now to, it's all been like sort of rescheduled or postponed. So it's a tough situation.
Yeah, every single trip I had planned, I'm not a wedding photographer, but traveling is a huge part of my business, and every single trip I had planned is currently canceled, except for August and onward so far hasn't canceled because I had a few things going well into November. So far, those events and organizations have said, no, we're going to keep it for the moment. So
at that point,
it doesn't get any worse.
Now, was it more these upcoming events more your call, or did you hear from these venues, or do you know that, say, places where you just did it for Corona?
No, I actually, this year I've been really busy with third-party events that book me. And so they were the ones who made
conferences
the call. Yeah, they're the ones who made the call. Yeah, workshops, conferences, things of that nature, shooting events that I mentor at. So they made that call. But when I asked about some of the later ones, and so far, at least in midsummer onward, they're like, no, they're
going to wait and take a little bit of a wait and see.
Exactly, they're going to see what happens. And the way I see it is, if something in August is still canceled because of all this, then we have a very serious problem. So it's interesting how this is going to play out. And like you said, I know it's like the elephant in the room. We can't help but talk about it. But unfortunately, vast majority of us, wedding photographers in general, artists, we're not considered essential when it comes down to it. So we're going to suffer a lot, and we have to get really creative on how to support each other as a community. Those of us who are floating like myself, maybe we can try to give something back. I'm going to try to do some question and answer AMA, see if I can get some people some knowledge, no charge, to whatever degree I can, because no one's booking me for anything. But there's people out there who have lost all. So I'm really curious to see how we, as full-time artists, my background is also musician, and I know plenty of people who are full-time musicians. They have no gigs. It's bad. So it's interesting how this is going to play out. We will not be the same culture and society when it's over. That's what I think.
Yeah. And this is like a crisis that none of us have ever been through in our lifetimes. And like I said, the way it came on so quick, it was just a couple weeks ago you were out running around and everything was normal, and suddenly now your government is telling you to stay in your home, which I get. I understand that 1,000%.
Right.
You got to keep people apart because if you're not in clumps, this disease can't spread from person to person. So it's a lot to ask, and you do get a little stir crazy staying at home. Now I've been in my second week here, except for a quick trip to the grocery store, and I'm even reluctant to do that, and it's tough to get food ordered up here in this area too, because a lot of these delivery services are filled. You can't even get a spot, so you have to make that little bit of a run out to the store. You can see people are staying away from each other a little bit. No panic, like I said.
Sure.
But a little bit of it.
What hit me not that long ago, maybe a week ago, when I was here, I'm either, it's kind of interesting. I'm either here at home at my desk right now, exactly where I'm sitting, or I'm God knows where. I'm somewhere else on an island somewhere out of state or something. It's always A and Z. I don't go out in Houston. I don't really have much of a social life, not because of, poor me. It's just I'm very busy. I'm here to work. So I stay home all day. Yeah. I stay home all day anyway. So right now my life hasn't changed that much, because when I'm home, I'm home. The difference is I haven't gone anywhere in a month, and that's a little strange, but I'm home. So with that in mind, I'm not out of my element. I'm not trying to figure out how to do my job from my house. This is what I do. Second, leading up until this crisis, business was okay and it was doing good for me and I was in a good place. So I took it like about a week ago and I said, I'm not going to feel sorry for myself in this situation. There are people so much worse off than me. I'm used to being home. I can still technically work. I have online offerings maybe that I can do for people. I'm okay. I'm not traveling. But other than that, there's so many people doing so much worse than me. I said, I'm going to stop complaining or feeling sorry for myself. And I'm going to see what I can try to do for the industry in my little way. And putting together ideas and things like that, because maybe at this point, maybe someone learning a little something about photography or retouching or something from me can give that little sliver of hope or something that gives a seed for something later.
Something to do and something to keep yourself busy. Yeah,
exactly. So what I'm trying to do, and I guess one could criticize me for it, is like on social media, I'm staying the course. I'm posting my work. I'm trying to discuss photography. Discuss retouching and try to talk about what's happening. I'm not playing dumb and I'm being naive to the situation, but I'm not posting articles. I'm not screaming about it all the time. I'm trying to provide some normalcy, if I can, because I'm grateful that I haven't lost all. And a lot of people already have. So I'm like, all right, so instead of me boo-hoo whining that oh, this all sucks. Well, it doesn't suck that hard for me yet. So I'm going to try to, again, stay the course and be positive for the industry and for people in general. I mean, for whatever that's worth, man, I'm not saying I'm a saint over here, but I'm trying to keep my chin up as best I can because
do your little part.
I haven't lost that much at the moment. So,
Yeah, it's tough. And last week when I was talking to my friend Trevor, it's up in Canada, and he happened to be traveling down in Costa Rica on a vacation, and they were even shutting down in Costa Rica, and he was telling me he had to get out of there early because he was going to get stuck, down there, and it's a global impact at this point. And so we were talking a little bit, and in that show we recorded, I think it was last week or so, trying to give some homework for photographers that they can do, things like, going onto their website, making sure everything's squared away, or little tasks that you can do that maybe you normally wouldn't have had time to do. Correct. You can keep yourself at least occupied doing these things, blogging or working on your website or learning something new in retouching. So maybe we'll talk about a few of those ideas as we get into this a little bit as well. If you have any tips, things that people can work on while they're stuck home. But what I want to do a little bit here at first is get into a little bit about what you do, how you got started, because this show now, surprisingly, we have lots of download listeners. People, for whatever reason, seem to be interested in what I'm talking about.
Hey, that's awesome, man.
But people are always very curious how someone got where they are. And the germ of sort of why I started to do this is once in a while I would get messages from people on Instagram, and one guy had sent me a message one day asking me a question, and, it wasn't, I guess, and it was a simple question, and I answered him, and his response was like, I can't believe someone like you would actually answer someone like me. And like, what are you talking about? And it seemed that there was this disconnect, like people, I don't see myself as anybody different than anybody else, but people seem to have a genuine curiosity on that path of becoming, more prominent in that field and how they got there. And a little bit of how you can sort of lay out that course. And not to be super boring about this to you, I know people tend to talk about this a lot, but where did you start, or how did this all become, how did you get interested in photography a little bit and get to where you are today?
Well, I actually like telling the story of how I got started because I grew up with it because of my dad. And so my dad's been a photographer since I was born. And he shot portraits and weddings and a lot of the stuff. And he was pretty sought after and well regarded in the 80s and early 90s. And then he switched to luxury real estate photography, commercial work in the 90s. And to this day, he still sort of does it, even though he's 72.
Good for him.
But what happened was that photography was what Dad did. It wasn't what I did. I was a graphic designer. I was a musician. I dabbled around assisting him, helping him out here and there. It was always there, but it was never something I paid attention to. And then, so, I'd love to have some story about this amazing, passionate journey of how I got into my art. Unfortunately, it's more of a story of necessity. So in 2008, during the very financial difficulties of 2008 and 9, my graphic design company that I've been working with my brother and also with my folks on, I'd been already kind of dabbling into other things anyway, and it was not going well. So graphic design was not well. The company wasn't good. I had to reinvent things. At the time, we had my ex-wife and I had a third child on the way, and suddenly things got desperate and people were losing jobs. My ex-wife got laid off. So you see, this is kind of a sad story. And then I decided, what can I do? What can I do? And it turned into maybe photography. And at the time, I was 32 years old, something like that. And so that's not exactly a young guy getting started on his new passion. There's a guy looking for something. But the good news is that where it becomes positive is that I had a springboard to get started, because I wasn't like, how do I do this? No, I didn't know what I was doing. My early work was crap, but
you had someone around that could really help you get started.
I wasn't going from zero. I borrowed some gear. He kind of looked at me like, really? Now? And then I ran with it, and I knew I had a certain standard to try to achieve because I wasn't going in ground up. I learned it was definitely a challenge, but it was born out of necessity. And then it became, I remember being about 34, 35 years old. And I went, where was this 20 years ago? This is like what I feel I do the best in terms of something that I can make money off of. So I was like, I finally discovered a career that's really for me, because I was a good musician. I was a good graphic designer, but I never got anywhere with it. So photography suddenly clicked, and I was like, "Oh man, I've been ignoring this my whole life."
So it was a little bit of an aha moment there.
Yeah. So by 2000,
found yourself.
exactly by 2011, I was more or less doing photography full time, and I thought I was going to be an automotive photographer because I was doing so many cars. I don't mean with models; I mean just cars.
Just the cars. Yeah.
And I thought, well, this is the direction I'm going. I'm okay with that because I'm a big car guy, and I thought that's what I was going to do. And then by mid 2012, most of my automotive clients decided to go in-house and reduce costs, you understand. And so suddenly I went, well, now what?
What's next?
And so I was still shooting models regularly and posting and trying to get that started by 2012. I've been doing that for years at that point, and shooting bad, cheesy glamour, but trying my best, And then when the automotive clients dropped, I had some inquiries from social media where they said, do you ever give workshops on model photography? And I said, sure.
I can.
And so I started in Houston in 2012. And I mean, like they say, the rest is history. I've done 200-something events since then. And education is my main career, which I can go on from there. But that's the basic impetus of everything, how it got started. I was looking for, as a self-employed guy since I was out of high school. I never went to college, never had a real job. Tried here and there to have real jobs. It didn't last. It's finally, I found, okay, this actually finally works, So, yeah, that's my story. It wasn't like I passionately quit my job to follow my dreams in 1977 or something crazy. No, I needed to figure something out in 2008 because we had to make some money. And now,
well, it was born out of necessity. But in your case, what was close to you turned out to be maybe the right thing for you. You got pushed in that direction. Otherwise, maybe you would have never thought to.
That's exactly right, because I am actually incredibly passionate about it now. I took it for granted. I think back now, and I think about the times when I was a young child in the 80s, 90s, whatever, late 70s, and I think about seeing great photography, and I always would pause at an amazing image, and there was something in the back of my head that said, how did they do this? And it just took it for granted because Dad was a photographer. That's just what he did. And so for me, I love music. I still do. That's my number one art passion that I try to make a career out of, but whatever. So I always had those moments. I would look at magazine covers. I would look at the newspaper, and I'd always stop and notice photography. And I didn't realize that I was actually driven to it until my 30s. And here I am now. I'm going to be 45 this year, and I've been at this a little over a decade. And I realized, wow, I'm really, really passionate about this. So it was born out of necessity, but it helped me discover a real passion, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and here's one thing, too, that you want to talk about. You're obviously super accomplished, and you have a great track record in what you're doing. And one of the things that you'll see now, this is going off on a little bit of a tangent here, that in the world of photography now, every other person is deeming themselves like an expert. Every single person is like a teacher or an educator, and most of it's really bad. So what does it take? I mean, or what are your thoughts on this? Have you noticed this over the past 4 or 5 years, that every single person seems to be selling themselves as like a teacher or an educator or a mentor? You've seen a lot of that around in that business too? Yeah, not only am I seeing it a lot around, but when I first started noticing that was the case upon entering the industry, because it's more now, but for reasons I'll get into, but it's still always been around. And I even inquired to my father. I said, hey, people are giving classes and workshops in town and this and that. And everybody has some. And my dad was like, they were doing that in the 70s. They were doing that in the 80s, He's like, I went to a few of them. They're a waste of money. They're a waste of time. And some of them were great and everybody was an expert. And I said, you're talking about 40 years ago. And he was like, yeah. So I started figuring out, because also as a musician, a lot of full-time musicians are not, Paul McCartney, duh. And so they find ways to make money to survive. And one of the ways is teaching lessons, right? Right. So every photographer, every artist wants to, it'd be nice to have a 45 weddings a year type of business, but if you don't have that yet, you've got to figure something out. So you're like, I get pretty good at something. Ooh, my friends ask me how to do it. Some social media posts, people go, oh, I wish I could do this stuff. Maybe I could teach it. Now, that impetus, I don't question. I don't doubt. There's nothing wrong with that. That's where I started doing it. But I think where it boils down to, where people can succeed in it, or more to the point where they fail at it, is a sincerity or lack of it. Because everybody thinks if you get pretty good at photography, that you can give a workshop to make a few bucks. $150 a head, a couple locals come here, I show them a few things, I make $1,000.
this is fish in a barrel.
Right.
The couple of things that you discover immediately, the vast majority of people, is that teaching is hard. Teaching is often thankless, because sometimes when you have the student who just gushes at you and loves everything you say and is writing on every one of your words, that's cool. But when you have the student who's difficult and questioning you and frustrated, and they need to be motivated, they're really grilling you, and they really want to know this, and suddenly this is difficult. A lot of people bail. They're like, man, this teaching stuff is too hard, and they're out. They don't care about the money anymore. So if you're sincerely like to engage with people, which I do, and you sincerely like to teach people stuff and watch them grow and advance, you have to be sincere about it, or I think you're cheating people and you're not going to succeed, bottom line.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think that maybe, and it just dawned on me, you were saying that maybe that's been there all the while, but now with social media you see it more because people are posting it everywhere, and it really has been in there. And the one thing that I see these ads, I think it's great to teach somebody. I think where the danger comes in is, as a student, you really have to do your work and invest your energies with someone who really has a solid foundation in what they're doing. And I think you really have to be wary of the people who are selling, like what's the easiest way to put this? Like when you see these be booked all the time, like they're selling a financial thing, how to make 6 figures a year doing this, because there's no way that they can ever promise or teach that. So I think the fundamental part is a little bit more safe. When you start to get into it, when someone's backing their class with money, that's where I think it becomes a little like shady.
Exactly. They're going to make you a 6-figure photographer, or whatever. It's like, and what does that mean exactly? Like you said, at the end of the day, for me, if you're, how do I describe this? How do I put it? The sincerity aspect is more than just like you sincerely want to teach people. The sincerity aspect,
it's not always about money.
Exactly. The sincerity aspect also means that, for example, we have the world of YouTube today. If you bought a brand new camera and you don't know how to use it, you can go to YouTube and figure out how to use it. That's the bottom line. Okay. So you don't book me or Lindsay Adler or Joel Grimes or anyone, or anybody, Joey Wright. You don't book these workshops or these individual mentoring sessions to say, show me how to use my camera. That's not what you're booking them for. You're booking them because you want something that they do, something about their vision, something about their process, something about their essence, if you will, without sounding overly flamboyant. Something about them is what they want, and I've discovered that. And forgive me, I've always told people when I tell them this, forgive me, this sounds arrogant, but people come to learn from me because they want to learn what I do. They don't want to learn how to use a camera. That's not what they're there for. So if you think I'm going to teach people how to use their camera, those classes exist and they work. Don't get me wrong. Brand new, beginner, come learn how to use DSLR. Those classes are fine. I'm not dogging that. But if you're going to do this in the long term, you have to be able to hopefully instill something in them that's more than just how to use your camera. And I, for better or worse, I've done that. So I think that everybody who tries to get into this and decides it's too difficult doesn't realize all the emotional investment involved, because I had become emotional over time seeing a student that showed up with a basic little camera and no clue, and a year later they're producing great work and run from, and I don't even hear from anymore. I just follow their work.
And you just get that. Sometimes it's connecting that or bridging that gap.
Yeah.
It could be a small gap, but you can be there to connect those 2 points, and then the lights go on to them. I think that one thing, and we're getting a little feedback about you on this too, about these classes. Like you said, if you see someone successful or a prominent person in their field, such as you, I think the dangerous part for someone who wants to learn is this template approach, that just because what worked for you, by me going to a class, I'm going to be able to use that same template. Like whatever does not necessarily work the same, because everybody's different. Everybody has their own approach. I think the fundamentals you can learn, but the danger there, I think, is what worked for me isn't necessarily the same formula that's going to work for somebody else.
That's exactly it. And we have to also remember that I speak ignorantly when I say this comparison, but if you're going to be a brain surgeon, I imagine that there's a very linear process. I'm not to say there isn't some artistry and emotion behind it, because you got to feel this out too, I imagine. Again, I'm speaking ignorantly, but I imagine that there's some pretty hard and fast rules on how to do brain surgery, not, right? So if you learn from a school and from other doctors and all that, and from, I don't know, when you get started from other senior doctors and whatnot, I imagine that there's a lot you have to emulate and copy directly, because this is people's lives on their, okay. But here's the deal. We are in an art form with photography, and then just like in music. So if you're directly copying and thinking this is it, you're already technically wrong. You have to emulate, you have to learn from what you're emulating, and you have to practice, do a hell of a lot of crappy work. And then eventually it'll click for you. And that is really the case forever. Speaking of musicians teaching, I used to teach guitar. So the kid, and I used to say kid because most of my students in guitar were teenagers, the kid who came back once a week and hadn't practiced didn't get any better. There's a surprise. And the kid who was constantly shucking to his fingers were bleeding, that kid was getting better every week. And instead of me saying, here's how to play guitar, eventually it evolved into, check out what I came up with, Mr. Batista. This is a cool idea. And I was like, okay, this person's on the right track. So learning is very individual and very different. So I discovered that. And I'm also fully aware that there's some people that I will never connect with. Like, I try, they don't get it. My teaching style does not connect with them.
Personalities, yeah.
They're frustrated. It just did not work that time. Mercifully, that's the few, not the regular. But learning style is so different. So when I finish a workshop, I am emotionally, mentally drained because I have to conform myself to everyone there. Like, someone asked me a question a certain way. Okay, where are they at in the context of this question, and how can I give them an answer that's good for them, as opposed to this person, as opposed to that person? And so I take my teaching very seriously, because it's almost like notches on a belt or something that person left happy and they're off to a great career because they're going to keep going. I didn't give them their skills. Like you said, I bridged the gap. I gave them a spark, maybe. That's what I try for better or worse. It's been a few years.
Yeah, no, and you're I think in a perfect situation to understand this, because one of the things that I always try to repeat is that people who want to get involved in photography, whatever the direction they're going to go is, there is this perception that the formula is go on Amazon. Say you have no experience in photography, go on Amazon. For some, you wake up that day with the inspiration, I'm going to be the wedding photographer. Buy camera on Amazon, go to Squarespace, get website. Now you're a pro. Those are the steps that are really necessary. And then people should be throwing money at you. Right. And the way I always related that to people is you just mentioned, well, if you wanted to become a professional guitar player, and say you wanted to be Eddie Van Halen, rolling into a Guitar Center and saying, I want the same model that Eddie uses, and you come home and you get your website, does that mean that bands are going to be calling you right away saying, come on tour with us? Right. You know, it's a long path to practice. And somehow, you know, that same mentality or that same idea does not apply, or it's not seen by people in the photography universe. There is this idea that by camera, people should be showing up for me, and now that I'm a pro, and everything should be easy.
Well, I think what I've told people is that the difference is these things. And I'm not saying that iPhone photography or phone photography is somehow less valid. What I mean is that we all have these in our hands. We all don't have guitars in our hand. There's one back there. We all don't have guitars in our hands on a daily basis. We do have these. So what happens is we take a picture and we experience that process and we go, oh, I'd like to do that better, but at least I know how. Most people have never touched a guitar, so they respect that, if you will. They look at it like, that must be difficult. But the camera, well, it can't be that hard. I take pictures all the time on their phone. Now, I don't actually fault people for having misconceptions and starting out and having delusions of grandeur. I don't fault that. What I do fault people on is when they don't get past that. When 6 months has gone by, when a year, 2, 3, 5 have gone by, and they still have this idea that because I own a camera, I'm good. That's the problem. Starting somewhere, sucking, thinking that what you're producing is amazing when it is.
Self-awareness is important.
Exactly. And so understanding, okay, my art is not actually working for me. I'm not satisfied, and it's not working in general. What can I do to be better? And of course, the answer is practice. So I don't fault people for sucking at first. I fault people for staying that way and lying to themselves, because I don't care if there's bad photographers out there producing bad work. It doesn't affect me. But you're not going to be happy yourself. And you're always going to have something itching at you like, I never get better. What are you doing about it? You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and also, and relating this back to guitar again, the people who really start to excel are the people who are locking themselves in their bedrooms after work or after school and practicing and practicing and practicing and practicing and doing all of that work. It is a lot of work, and I think a lot of people fall by the wayside right there, because most people, you know, you can tell them exactly what to do. It doesn't mean they're gonna do it, and that's where they find out, well, this isn't really as fun as I thought it would be. But for those few people, for whatever reason, like with photography, when you find yourself sitting at 11 o'clock at night staring at photos going, how the hell did they do that? I really want to make a photo like that. And then you realize, wow, here I am sitting in the middle of the night trying to figure out how somebody made a particular photo. You find out whether that is your passion or your desire, and then, very few people, I think, are able to move through and continue.
I think on a lot of art forms, photography has, apart from the cost of the gear, photography has a very low barrier of entry because you can buy a camera and produce an image today. You cannot buy a guitar and produce a song today. It won't happen. Right. You need weeks or months to be able to play anything. So the barrier of entry on musical instruments is very high. The barrier of entry on photography is low. So there's a false confidence that happens quickly. And I will say openly, I did it too. Not only my dad was in it, but I had camera, and how hard can this be? I could figure this out. I bought equipment, therefore good. And that I learned very quickly. I was almost like embarrassed that I thought my early stuff was good, and I want to get over it. I was like, this is terrible. I think this is good. I'm embarrassed. And I was psycho devoted to figure out, how do I do this? How do I get something that's good? And I remember that feeling. But again, I think that's why there's so many people entering the photography field, because you buy a camera and you can produce a picture.
And self-awareness, like you said, is a big thing that a lot of people don't have. It's sitting down 6 months or a year later after you've taken 5,000 photos and you're looking back at some of your older things going, maybe that's not quite as good as I thought it was 6 or 8 months ago. And that's self-awareness, I think. And that, and not everybody can do this. Not everybody can connect these dots and say, well, what do I need to do to get to this next level? Or not even that, just see it. Sometimes in their own work, they can't see these mistakes or know,
Right. And what happens is, I read an article once that, you take everything you read on the internet, you take lightly. But this article made sense to me. And it said that a lot of times as an artist, they were talking about photography specifically, but I paralleled it to every art form. You look back at your first year work, right? Let's say you've been at it 5, 6, 10 years, whatever. You look back at your first year work and you go, ooh, well, apart from the fact you didn't know what you're doing, so the work is probably not that great. The other aspect is that your eye, ergo your brain, has evolved. Your artistic brain has evolved. So you see things differently now. So what you used to see as great because you didn't know any better, now your brain has evolved, and you go, oh yeah, that's really not cohesive. That's not well produced. Doesn't have any flow to it. Right. you see what's wrong with it because your brain changed. Especially if you stuck to it.
Right, and it's work. And I want to relate this a little bit to what you do in terms of model photography. I think, with a big chunk of guys, the first thing that they do if they want to start taking photos of models. Yeah. For whatever that seems appealing, it seems like, I'm going to get these women in bikinis or whatever, and start to do that. The truth of the matter is, like, model photography has a really bad history in terms of. I don't know the right way to put this, but there's a lot of bad model photographers.
Oh yeah,
or guys who act inappropriately or doing it for the wrong reasons. What do you think it takes to sort of push through that and to rise above and to start to get known and to start to be seen as not one of these people?
Well, I'm going to go back to my other word earlier, and that's sincerity. You can be sincere in your desire to photograph beautiful women. Male artists have been venerating women in art for millennia. That in and of itself is not wrong, in my opinion. But if what is your intent? What is your actual goal? If your goal is, I like hot chicks and I like taking pictures of them. All right, well, you know what? You should probably just own that, because at least that's going to, you're going to be able to accept what that brings you. How about that? You don't have to be critical of others. You don't have to be overly condemning of men who like pictures of pretty girls. Because there's you have to. How do I put this? You have to straddle the line. I am fully, sincerely okay with sexuality as an expression. I'm okay with strength and beauty of a woman in a strong, sensual, powerful manner. I think that if it's done with that kind of sincerity, then it's okay. I have no fear of sexual energy and sexual visuals. Everyone has a different threshold, which we can talk about later. Someone's pornography is someone else's art.
Right.
But again, it goes back to sincerity. What are you trying to do? Are you trying to create something beautiful that may be sexy, but beautiful with what intention? And I think that and I have to tread very lightly here.
Yeah, I understand. I'm in the same universe as you with boudoir and women.
So I've got to tread very lightly here, because I can tell when a gentleman has come to a workshop of mine, and he's, for lack of a better term, one of those. They have been at this for potentially even 20 years.
Yeah.
And their only point in life is, can I point a camera at pretty girls? Nino, can you please stop talking? I don't care about what you're talking about.
We want to get to the photo.
I want to take pictures of pretty girls. That I don't think will ever end. And that's a whole discussion, a whole interview on itself. But the sincerity is what drives it, because you can be sincerely into a very aggressive sexual style. You can be sincerely into evocative nudes. I mean, Robert Mapplethorpe, you can be into this stuff sincerely. You may ripple the waters and offend some people, but if you're sincere about it, then at least you're not a predator, at least you're not a threat to anybody, at least you're not exploiting anybody. Because to me, a woman in an image can look beautiful and powerful and sexual and amazing, but not exploited. As soon as anything starts to look a little exploited, I'm out. I can't take that. That's garbage. And I think you need to reevaluate what you're doing. So it's not that I'm just so hoity-toity and everything is just about lines and art and aesthetic and mood. No, sometimes it's about sex. But it's done in a sincere way that hopefully empowers not only the model in the shot, but women as a whole, and hopefully society as a whole. I'm fully aware that what I do is controversial to some. And that's fine, because I used to also play heavy metal. And that was controversial to some, for whatever that's worth. I played all kinds of music, but my point is that an artist doesn't always want to fit in. An artist doesn't always want to do what they're told and fall into a niche. However, by making that decision, you have to constantly fight and deal with the stigma. And the stigma is, hi, I'm Nino Batista. I take pictures of pretty girls. Oh, you're one of those
guys. Yeah.
Immediately I have to start,
No, wait.
Yeah, hold up a second, or try to find different ways to explain that. Now, hopefully I do that with my work, hopefully I do that with the way I teach, interviews like this, etc. And I don't talk too much about my personal life, but I have an almost 16-year-old daughter. That right there makes me so profoundly aware of what young pretty girls have to deal with in this society as it is. So there's so many people out to get them, out to exploit them, out to use them, out to unfortunately hurt them. It's a sick world. They have enough of that trash. And here I am saying, oh no, but I'm different. That's not an easy task sometimes. Yeah. But I almost feel, and this is going to be a real stretch here, but I almost feel like it's an obligation or a calling, if you will, to give these models an opportunity to, because it's not like I'm certainly not the first one, but in this world of 10,000% more models than 10 years ago out there, give them an avenue to explore what they want to do with their beautiful work, their sexualized work, whatever it may be, not in the usual gross way, if that makes sense. That sounds really, really hoity-toity right now, I know, but I just don't see it ever changing. So I just have to be that guy. Well, there's plenty of others, but I have to be that guy who doesn't do that, but has to carry that burden of the stigma. Because
that crosses, yeah. And as far as you mentioned earlier, that you think there are more women trying to get involved in the modeling now than there were.
Absolutely.
10 years.
Absolutely. Social media has got what social media, the internet in general, in my opinion, has done. It hasn't caused any more of anything. It's just allowed people to express it more in a platform. Every subject in the world, we don't want to get into sociopolitics right now, but every subject in the world, people go, such and such is on the rise. No, it's just that people can talk about it more now. So, I think that there's a lot of young girls, mostly girls, but also young men, and all ages actually, for both genders, who not only had wanted to do it, like I would love to do that, but they look at social media and they realize it's normalized. Yeah, people criticize it all the time, the Instagram model. And
so many people are online posting photos of themselves.
So there's some normalcy to it. So it's like, well, maybe I can do that. Maybe my dad telling me that if I do that, I'm a whore. Maybe that's not true. Maybe, you can actually do this to, again, to varying degrees of sincerity and success. There's exploitive stuff. There are models who self-exploit and photographers who do the same. So I think that what we're doing is we're allowing people to try these dreams. And unfortunately, most of it, just like musicians, most of these are short-lived dreams. 1 to 3 years, and they realize it didn't work, back to whatever I was doing before.
Right.
Because it's hard. It's really hard. It's not because people are idiots. It's hard. So, yes, there are more women, I believe, and certainly men as well, because I've experienced male models as well, who feel like, hey, this is actually okay to try. And so we have an influx of it. So because of that, it's almost like, and this is going to sound terrible, but it's almost like, if you have...
You've been listening to the free version of the Mike Cassidy Photography Podcast, which brings you the smartest content in photography. If you value what you've been hearing, Mike has created a membership program that brings you far more in-depth content if you want to take your knowledge of the business of photography to the next level. To hear the full interviews with all of Mike's guests, become a premium member today by visiting thephotographypodcast.show/subscribe.
And we'll wrap it up here. I've been talking for a super long time, and what I want to do here is first tell everybody where they can find you. And now that everything is canceled, but I want to go to Thailand. Looks like we had some stuff going on in Thailand. I can't beat that. But what's on the menu? Where can everybody find you? And if they have any questions, how can they reach out?
Travel's, like I said, nixed right now, so I'm not going anywhere. I'll be in Houston for quite some time, probably for the next 3 months is what I'm guessing, the way things are going, because I don't think things will be rescheduled that quick. But luckily, because this is what I tell people, if you need any more information about me, mercifully, I have a very unique name. So literally, you can just Google Nino Batista, and
there you are.
So my website's ninobatista.com. But luckily, my name is not John Smith, so just type in Nino Batista into Google, and basically anything you might want to know comes up. And I make myself pretty accessible. ninobatista@gmail.com. Shoot me an email if you want, etc. So yeah, it's pretty easy to find out what I'm doing and where I'm going to be. But currently, no trips to...
And where do you post this? Still on your website if people want to check out and see when we get back to normal here, your upcoming dates?
So my website is more of a repository of my portfolio, and also a place where I sell my Photoshop actions and Photoshop plugins. It is not a place for up-to-current news. That's going to be my social media, Facebook and Instagram. Okay. I don't post it there because I just don't check it enough. I don't monitor the website enough. I update the portfolio every 2 or 3 weeks, but events need to be current and hot, so I don't... like, for example, I have a live broadcast today in a couple of hours, and I can't put that on the website because I'll forget to take it down or whatever. No, it's too much live content. So not just live broadcasting, but active content. So if you want to know about where
social media, yeah. You're all over the place, Nino. And then your presets, which are great. Taking a quick look at all that stuff as well. They can get all that information on your website. Tell real quick what's involved in the presets or what you got for people.
So the presets specifically are the Photoshop actions. We do have those. There's 3 sets, and they're pretty cool. And there's a video on every single action on my YouTube. I don't believe in good luck, push buttons. No, they're the utility actions. They're not 4,700 color presets. We do have some of that for my plugins.
You don't have a pack of 18,000 of them?
I don't have 18,000 presets. No, I'm sorry. For $29. No, presets are great to get you started, and my philosophy is use presets to get you started and to massage an idea into something. But I also have 4 plugins, which... it's another discussion, but if you go to my website, you'll find the Photoshop plugins, which are not actions, obviously, and they do 4 very different things, and I use them pretty much daily. So
part of the
workflow. So if you like them, cool.
Tons of information today. We're changing the world in our own little way here. So it's good to meet you. It's nice to talk to you. Like I said, I've been following you and creeping on your Instagram for years now, and it's nice to get to talk to you. Thanks for taking the time. I know you're really busy coming on the show today, and hopefully we'll have you on again in the future.
Okay, excellent, my man. I appreciate you having me out. It was a lot of fun.